welcome back to Fast Freddy RC, and today we are going to start the build process for the Tamiya Wild One Blockhead Motors Edition. So, right off the bat, we're going to add one upgrade to this, which is a full set of ball bearings. And I think what I'll do is I'll just take you through the manual before we actually get started. So if you look at step 1, we're going to charge the battery. I'm probably going to hold off on that. And then step 2, we're actually taking off this plastic bit on the chassis and adding stickers. This is a first. Most RC cars, you don't put the stickers or anything until afterwards, but this is something you're going to do right off the bat. Then for step 3, we've got the light pods, so we're going to build those. And you can see that so that you can put the LEDs in there at a later date, or if you have them. Then we're going to attach those to the chassis, and then we're going to put on the bumper and this front axle, which is fairly substantial. It's a pretty thick metal bar. Then we're going to attach that whole front axle and bumper to the body. Then in step 7, we're going to build those front arms and add the ball joints. And then in step 8, we're going to attach those to the front axle. And then that part will allow us to move on to putting on the front dampers, or I should say building the front dampers. And then adding the oil, because this does have the oil-filled shocks. And then adding all the components necessary so that we can, in step 12, put those onto the chassis at the front. Then we move on to building the rear axle and the rear parts, so rear suspension shafts, and you can see how that's all going to go. Then we're going to move on to 14, which is attaching the gearbox stays. Then moving on to 15, which is working on the roll cage. And then, of course, installing the roll cage after that. Then moving on to step 17, we are now moving into building the gearbox. So that's 17 and 18, and then 19, we're going to be attaching it to the chassis. Then, again, put off on the screws on the other side for the gearbox. And then we've got the rubber boot thing, which is another, it basically is a reappearance from the ORV chassis, because that's the only time I've seen this. So now on the Wild One, we're going to use the same thing again, get it all set up, pretty much like the Frog and the Blackfoot, etc., because it's got that trailing arm suspension. And then we're going to attach that to the chassis as well. Then in step 23, we're going to be working with the motor. Getting that pinion on, and then here we've got the cover attaching the motor, and then on 25 we're going to work with the rear shocks, add the oil in 26, add the springs, get those attached, and then we are going to attach those to the rear of the car in step 28. Then moving on, in step 29, we're going to be checking the radio gear, as we've done before. And there's that whole thing about servos, the servo savers, etc., and what kind of unit you've got in picking which one is the correct for you. We'll get to that. Then we've got to attach the tie rods for the steering servo in step 30. Then in 31, we're attaching all of the radio gear and installing it into the chassis. Then in 32, we're going to work with steering adjustments, so we'll work with that at a later date. And then, look at this, cutting and polycarbonate body parts. Well, you can see that we don't need to do that for this one, because the Wild One Blockhead Motors comes with it all pre-painted and pre-cut. And even the driver figure is molded in or painted in the black and the white. So all of that step is not going to be needed to be done. And you can see this is probably, well, I know this will be for the regular Wild One really, but it's all there ready to go. Painting the body, we're not going to need to do any of that. So we can move on to 35, which is actually installing the other lights into the body, and whatever else needs to be done with those screws. Then moving on to 36, it'll be the driver figure. That will have to be painted, and I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do. And I noticed, as you know, what we were looking at, it's modeled in the white, but I may want to paint the safety straps. So I don't know. I'll have to take a closer look at that. And then in 37, we're going to put all the stickers onto the body, which I have to admit, the Blockhead Motors Wild One, I just absolutely love the look of it. So it's going to be cool getting to that step. Then we're going to attach the driver figure into the chassis. Then, yep, same thing. We're going to add a bit more of the roll cage as well. Then in 39, we're going to cut out the netting that we're going to put around the roll cage and where the driver sits. And you can see there, same thing. It's showing you how to install that netting. That's kind of a cool feature actually for this one. And then at the 41, we're going to be putting in those number plates and putting on the number stickers. And then we move on to the tires and wheels for step 42. Then in 43, we're going to install those wheels onto the chassis. And then for 44, attaching the body, well, we've also got the blue piece as well that's going to go on the top of the roll cage that's going to be attached. So there's actually quite a few steps with this one. I mean, we're already at step 44. And then in 45, we're going to install the battery pack and the battery stay piece that's going to attach on the bottom of the chassis. And then that's it. We will be ready to go. So that's a kind of a real quick overview of the manual. So I think let's get started. And I think what we'll do in this first one is let's take the steps all the way through to where we finish putting on the front arms, because the next section is all about building and putting the shocks together. So let's get started on step 1, which is attaching the stickers to the body. So in most cases, I like to leave a bit of bleed when I'm cutting out stickers. But with this, it's very, very tight all the way through. So what I'm finding is when you're cutting out the sticker, you're going to need to really go to the edges as much as possible so that it fits well. And I kind of use a blend of the scissors and an X-Acto knife to actually go through that, but it's looking pretty good at this point, so I'm going to install this one. And there we have it. Wasn't too bad. The stickers are a bit finicky on this, but I think that looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. So here we have step 3, which is the clear lenses that are going to go into these light units that you see that can be built. Now you can also see that there is an optional light unit that you can buy. I'm not going to do that at this point, so I'm just going to build them without the unit. And I've already built a couple. So here's a couple of the light housings right now as it is. And I have 2 more to build, and they're all parts of part tree R. And then I've pulled a couple of screws together, but you can see they're really small. So I'm just going to finish that up, and then we'll move over to step 4. Okay, so step 4 is attaching the front bumper stays. So you can see what we have to do and attach 2 of the lights that we made in the previous step. And then of course it's showing you not to over tighten because they have the little O-rings. Well, I've got all my screws and the parts needed for this step, so I'll go ahead and put those on. Okay, so there we have the front bumper stays and the front lights attached. So now we can move on to step 5, which is the front axle. So I've pulled some of the parts together that we need for that step, and along with the screws needed for that. So we'll go ahead and put that together. Okay, so there you have it. There is finished step 5 with the front axle fully attached, which is obviously going to attach itself to the trailing arm front suspension. That metal bar is pretty heavy, so obviously that's what's creating the rigidity and the strength along with the graphite plate. So now we move on to step 6, and as you can see, we are now going to attach the front axle that we just built onto the car itself. And the screws that we need are right here, so I'll go ahead and install that now. Once those 5 screws are in place, the finished front bumper and front axle look like that. Next step is the front arms. So here are all of the screws and the parts that are going to be needed to put this together, as well as the A-arms themselves. So I got both sides. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that together. So as I mentioned in my channel update for 2023, I am moving back to finishing the build of the Blockhead Motors Wild One. And I've just discovered that when I started this build for you, it was January of 2022, January 23rd in fact, and the date at this very minute is January 20th of 2023. And this was the reason I ended up having to pause. As you can see, there is a ball connector stuck inside one of the steering arms. And of course, there's the other half of the ball connector. So I had reached out to Great Hobbies, where I picked up this car, and they said, hey, no worries, we'll get this sorted for you. He goes, do you want the good news or the bad? And I said, well, let's go with the good first. And he said, well, we'll even get the arms in for you, so you can, you'll have the original stuff. You don't have to do any fiddling to fix this. I said, okay, that's great. So what's the bad news? Well, it's 12 weeks right now to get in any kind of parts. I was like, ooh, okay. So I ended up moving on to another vehicle, and while I'm waiting for this, and different things happen, and I started working on some other things. So we are now going to get back to doing this. And so they sent me this after those 12 weeks. So they are replacement parts, and they're the exact ones for this. So I will start with the other one that's, okay. I'm just going to be a bit more careful as I put in the ball connector, because now I'm obviously a little worried that something's amiss and it's going to snap again. So we'll figure that one out. But I mean, they did send me a whole bunch of extra ball connectors just because they knew I was concerned about it. So whatever, it is what it is. So we're going to get into putting on those ball connectors again, and let's hope for the best so we can continue this step. So here is a finished ball connector joint. I did this off camera because, again, I was doing this very, very slowly, trying to turn it in, because the last time that I did this, I wasn't putting that much pressure, and then all of a sudden it just snapped right off. So I've been watching it and kind of going back just to make sure it was still loose before tightening again, and then kind of backing it off, and then tightening again, backing off, tightening again, just so that I got a sense that the ball connector was actually going in rather than the possibility of it snapping off. But there is the original ball connector and original arm from the kit. So I'll go ahead now and open up this bag, and we'll grab the other one that's in there. At least there's a spare, I suppose. We'll grab that, and then we'll grab one of the ball connectors that they sent me, and I'll put that in. And again, I'm going to do it the same way. I don't know, a little hesitant just because of what happened the first time. So I'll put this one in and let's see what happens. Woo! And there we go. They're both on. No problems. Part of one seemed a little tight, but as I kind of worked it back and forth, as I said I did before, everything was fine. So they are on. Exciting, because now we can finally get moving again and move on to the next steps. So you can see here that the way they want this done, this part here has to go here in between the two arms, and then there's going to be this pin which has to be greased, but I'm just going to show you this for now. Pop that in, and then different design than I've seen before. You have the Allen key and the grub screw, which is actually going to keep that shaft attached to this arm. So it's just a grub screw that's holding that arm to this arm. So anyways, I'll grab the grease and we'll get this done, and we'll put in the grub screws. Okay, so let's put this on. Just like that, as we can see in this instruction. And then we're going to grease up the pin. Put a fair bit on there, I think. And then we're going to slide that through. I'll just grab some paper towel and get my hands out of that grease. Push it in tight so that it's, even on both sides. And then we'll grab the Allen key and the grub screw, holding both together like that. Turn that in, and I can feel it pulling, so we'll just hold it tight, and I might do it the other way just so that I've got the more leverage. Spin this back. And there we go. So that's nice and tight. So that is how that is attached. It's only a grub screw really holding that onto that pin. But it's nice and smooth because obviously the pole, or the pin, is in there with some grease. Everything's moving soft, or fine I should say. So I'll go ahead and do the other one and we'll move on to the next step. So there we go. There are the finished front arms. And you can see in this diagram in terms of where those grub screws were to go, and I don't know if you can sort of see it in there, but they're way back there just so that it's nice and tight and out of the way, which is more or less what they're showing in these diagrams as well. So they are finished. So we can move on to step 8, which is attaching the front arms. So I'll just grab the, what are they? The flange lock nuts that we need, and we'll put those on the chassis. Okay, so we've got our flange nuts ready to go. So we'll grab the body, and you can see that this will be the right one because it's the flat indentation here that makes it so you know that that's the correct one. So all we're going to do is slide that on, and then take the flange nut and screw it in. And you can go tight with this because it can't, there's only so far it can go. And there you have it. So there is one of the arms. And it's an interesting sort of trailing arm front suspension idea, so that's a bit different. So that's kind of cool. So I'll go ahead and do the next one. It's pretty much the same thing. And then we'll move on to the next step, which actually is building the shocks.